The Great Hall of the Coalition Station was larger than any city square on Earth. Its ceiling curved like the inside of a planet, covered with moving stars that were not real but carefully programmed to impress visitors. Hundreds of alien species filled the rising platforms, tall ones with crystal skin, small ones wrapped in floating robes, beings of light held in metal frames. Voices echoed in many tones, but all fell silent when the central platform began to glow. Sarai stood alone in the center. She was small compared to most of the others. Her skin was pale blue, smooth, with faint silver lines along her neck and arms that showed her blood moved close to the surface. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the false stars above. She wore the white ceremonial cloth of the coalition, a symbol of purity and value. To the council, she was perfect. To herself, she felt very young. Sarai was the youngest officially approved breeding candidate in the sector. The title sounded important, even honorable, but it meant her life was no longer her own. From the moment her rare genetics were confirmed, her future had been decided by others. She would be used to form alliances, to strengthen bloodlines, to secure peace between powerful species. No one had asked her if she was ready. No one had asked her if she wanted this. She kept her hands folded in front of her because they were shaking. At the edge of the hall, a group of humans stood together. They were new to the coalition, still considered strange and unpredictable. Their uniforms were simple compared to the elaborate designs of other species. One of them, a human male named Ethan Hale, watched the ceremony with a careful, serious expression. Ethan had served in space for most of his adult life. He had seen alien worlds, strange wars, and broken treaties. He had learned that when powerful beings gathered in one place and smiled too much, something was usually wrong. He noticed the girl immediately, not because she was beautiful, though she was in a quiet, fragile way. He noticed her because she looked terrified. The lead counselor, a towering being with 4 arms and a voice like grinding stone, raised one limb. "Let the record show," the counselor said, "that candidate Sarai of the Lyrian species has reached eligibility. Her genetic profile places her among the most valuable assets in the sector." Asset. The word made Ethan frown. The counselor continued, "In accordance with ancient law, a compatible counterpart shall be presented. This cycle the coalition recognizes humanity as the designated prize species." A low murmur spread through the hall. Ethan blinked. "Did he just say prize?" he muttered. The human translator beside him hesitated. "The term is difficult. It implies value awarded to." Before the explanation could finish, the counselor pointed directly at the human delegation. "Ethan Hale," the counselor said, "step forward." Every eye in the hall turned toward him. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He looked around, half expecting someone else to move. No one did. Slowly, he stepped away from his team and walked toward the central platform. Each step echoed loudly in the silence. Sarai lifted her eyes for the first time. She had been taught not to look at candidates. It made things harder. But when she saw the human approaching, something unexpected happened. He was not smiling. He was not proud. He looked confused and concerned. That confused her even more. Ethan stopped a few meters away from her. Up close, he could see how young she really was. Not a child, but barely past the early stages of adulthood. Her posture was stiff, like someone trying very hard not to break. The counselor spoke again. "By coalition tradition, the human male stands as the prize, offered in recognition of candidate Sarai's value." Ethan raised his hand. The hall gasped. Interrupting the council was almost unheard of. "With respect," Ethan said slowly, choosing his words, "I'm not an object, and neither is she." The translator repeated his words in dozens of languages. The counselor's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, human. This is an honor." Ethan looked directly at Sarai. "Is it?" No one had ever asked her that in public. Sarai's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but fear held her silent. If she said the wrong thing, her people could suffer. If she said nothing, her future would be sealed. Ethan noticed her hesitation. He turned back to the council. You call me a prize. That means I'm supposed to be given away, but I don't agree to this, and I don't think she does either. The murmurs grew louder, sharper. Human, the counselor said, anger rising in its voice, your consent is not required. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then you've already lost me. The hall erupted. Sarai felt her heart race. No one had ever refused the system. Species had fought wars to be part of it. And here was this human standing alone, saying no, not for power, not for pride, but because it was wrong. For the first time since her selection, she felt something warm in her chest. Hope. Security drones shifted, preparing to intervene. The counselor raised all four arms. Silence. The noise faded, but tension remained thick in the air. You will explain yourself, human, the counselor demanded. Ethan took a slow breath. He knew he was pushing against something ancient and dangerous, but he also knew he couldn't stay silent. Where I come from, he said, people aren't traded to make peace. We learned the hard way that forcing lives together doesn't create unity, it creates suffering. The counselor laughed, a harsh sound. Human history is filled with conflict. You dare lecture us? Ethan nodded. Yes, because we survived it and because we changed. Sarai watched him closely. No one had ever spoken like this for her, not even her own leaders. The counselor turned its gaze to Sarai. Candidate, do you accept the prize? The question felt like a blade. All eyes returned to her. Her people watched from their platform, their faces carefully neutral. They needed this alliance. They needed her obedience. Sarai's hands trembled. She opened her mouth and closed it again. Ethan stepped closer, just one step, but enough. He spoke softly so only she could hear. You don't have to answer right now. Whatever you choose, make sure it's your choice. Something inside her shifted. She straightened her back. Her voice was quiet but clear. I do not understand why he is called a prize. The counselor frowned. It is ceremonial language. Then, Sarai said, gaining strength, why does it feel like a chain? The hall fell silent again. The counselors exchanged glances. This was not how the ceremony was supposed to go. Ethan felt a strange sense of pride. Not in himself, but in her. The lead counselor spoke carefully now. Candidate Sarai, your role has been decided by law. Sarai looked at the human beside her. Laws are made by people, she said. They can be changed. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. The counselor's voice hardened. Enough. This proceeding will be suspended. Lights dimmed. Guards moved forward. Ethan positioned himself slightly in front of Sarai without thinking. It was a small gesture, but she noticed. No one had ever stood between her and the council before. As they were escorted away from the platform, Sarai felt fear again, but it was different now. It was mixed with something new, possibility. She glanced at Ethan. You caused much trouble, she said softly. He gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, I get that a lot. For the first time, Sarai smiled too. Neither of them knew what would happen next. They only knew that the system had cracked, and that crack had started with one human refusing to be a prize, and one alien girl realizing she might not have to be a sacrifice. And somewhere deep within the vast coalition station, ancient laws began to tremble. The holding quarters assigned to Ethan and Sarai were quiet, too quiet for a station that never truly slept. Soft white walls curved smoothly, designed to calm nervous minds. To Ethan, it felt more like a waiting room before judgment. Sarai stood near the window, looking out at the endless stars. The silence pressed on her thoughts. Every moment since the ceremony replayed in her mind, the shock on the council's faces, the sound of Ethan's voice when he spoke for her, the way the ancient system had cracked just a little. Ethan sat on a bench across the room, his hands resting on his knees. He knew better than to fill the silence too quickly. Some moments needed space. You didn't have to stand in front of me, Sarai said at last, still facing the stars. Ethan shrugged lightly. Felt like the right thing to do. She turned to look at him. That act alone could cost you your position, maybe more. Wouldn't be the first time I got into trouble for saying no, he replied. Sarai studied him carefully. Humans were strange. Other species valued strength, intelligence, or genetic perfection. This human seemed to value choice above all else. That made him dangerous to the system and comforting to her. A soft tone sounded through the room. A projection activated in the center, revealing a council representative, smaller than the lead counselor but no less severe. The council will now hear explanations, the representative said. Human Ethan Hale, you have disrupted a process older than your species. Ethan leaned forward. Maybe that process needs disruption. The representative's eyes flicked to Sarai. Candidate, your silence would have been acceptable. Your resistance was not. Sarai felt fear rise again, but she did not lower her gaze. I was never asked if I consented. A pause followed. Consent is assumed under coalition law. Ethan shook his head. That's not consent. That's control. The representative's tone cooled. Human values are not universal. Maybe they should be, Ethan said calmly. The projection faded. Sarai exhaled shakily. They are angry. Yeah, Ethan said, means they're listening. Time passed slowly after that. Sarai was escorted away briefly to speak with her own people. Ethan remained alone, guarded but unharmed. He stared at the ceiling, thinking of Earth, of old stories where humanity had once made the same mistakes, using people as tools, calling it tradition. When Sarai returned, her eyes were tired. My leaders are afraid, she said. They depend on the coalition. They believe my refusal could bring punishment. Ethan stood. And what do you believe? She hesitated. I believe I was chosen because I am useful. Not because I am ready. That's not right, he said quietly. She looked at him again, really looked. Why do humans care so much about choice? Ethan thought for a moment. Because we learned what happens without it. Slavery, forced marriages, wars fought over bloodlines. We nearly destroyed ourselves. The only reason we're still here is because we changed. Sarai absorbed this. Her people had never faced collapse. Their system had always worked for those in power. Another summons came soon after. This time, Ethan and Sarai were brought before a smaller chamber, filled with observers from many species. This was not a ceremony. This was a trial of ideas. The lead counselor appeared again, towering and imposing. Human Ethan Hale, it said, you claim this system violates individual will, yet it has maintained peace for centuries. Peace for whom? Ethan asked. For the powerful, not for her. The counselor turned to Sarai. Candidate, speak. Her heart pounded, but she did not step back. I was told my role was an honor, but honors should not feel like cages. A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. The counselor's voice grew sharper. You are young. You lack perspective. Ethan stepped forward again. Youth doesn't erase the right to choose. A new voice joined in, calm and curious. An elder representative from a neutral species floated forward. Council, may I ask a question? The lead counselor paused. Proceed. The elder looked at Ethan. Human, your species was once excluded from this system. Why? Ethan answered honestly. Because we refused to submit our genetics for control, murmurs spread. And yet, the elder continued, humanity thrives. You are adaptable, resilient. Your population grows without regulation. Yes, Ethan said, because freedom creates strength. The elder turned to the council. Perhaps the system is not as perfect as believed. The lead counselor bristled. This is not a philosophical debate. But it should be, Sarai said, surprising herself with her confidence. Silence followed. The council withdrew to deliberate. Hours passed. Sarai sat beside Ethan, their shoulders almost touching. She felt grounded by his presence. What happens if they rule against us? She asked softly. Then we keep pushing, Ethan replied. Change never comes easy. Finally, the council returned. By ancient statute, the lead counselor announced, a candidate may invoke a single appeal if supported by a recognized legal precedent. Sarai's breath caught. There is such a precedent. The counselor's eyes shifted to Ethan. Yes. One written by humanity during first contact, a clause prioritizing informed consent. Ethan blinked. You kept that. We ignored it, the counselor admitted. Until now. The chamber buzzed. Sarai felt a surge of emotion, hope, fear, disbelief. What does the appeal require? A choice, the counselor said, publicly declared, binding. All eyes turned to her. She looked at Ethan. He did not speak. He did not push. He simply waited. Sarai stepped forward. I choose myself, she said. I choose time. I choose to live before I am used. Gasps echoed. The counselor raised its arms. Then the system must pause for you and for all candidates like you. A shockwave of realization swept through the chamber. This was bigger than one girl. Ethan felt something heavy lift from his chest. The counselor continued reluctantly. The breeding program will be reviewed. Participation will become voluntary. The words sounded unreal. Sarai's legs trembled. Ethan caught her before she fell. For a moment the galaxy faded and there was only the simple truth that she was free. Later, as they stood once more by the window, Sarai spoke softly. You were never my prize. Ethan smiled. Good, I'd be terrible at it. She smiled back, brighter this time. You were my proof. Outside, the stars kept moving. And across the coalition, ancient systems began to change. Not because of force, but because one human had refused to be owned, and one alien girl had found the courage to choose. The announcement spread through the coalition faster than any ship could travel. What began as one paused ceremony became a sector-wide discussion. For the first time in centuries, species that had accepted the system without question were being forced to look at it again. Sarai felt the change almost immediately. When she walked through the halls of the station now, eyes still followed her, but the looks were different. Some were curious, some were respectful, some were angry. She was no longer just a candidate. She was a symbol of disruption. Ethan stayed close, not as a guard, but as a steady presence. He had been offered protection, even praise from certain delegations, but he rejected special treatment. He had not acted for recognition. He had acted because it was right. One cycle later, the council summoned them again. This time, the chamber was full. Not only council members, but observers, leaders, scholars, and military representatives from dozens of species. The air felt heavy with expectation. The lead counselor spoke first. The pause has caused instability. Ethan did not flinch. Truth often does. The counselor's many eyes fixed on him. Entire systems are questioning long-standing agreements, birth rates, alliances, power balances. Sarai stepped forward. Because those systems were built on silence. A low murmur followed. The counselor turned to her. Your words carry weight now, candidate Sarai. I am not a candidate, she said clearly. I am a person. The statement echoed through the chamber. An elder from another species rose. Council, our own young have begun asking questions. They want choice. They want to know why consent was never discussed. Another representative added, our warriors are uneasy. They were raised to protect freedom, yet our systems deny it. The lead counselor's posture stiffened. This is dangerous. Ethan stepped into the center of the chamber. So was our past. Humanity nearly destroyed itself because we believed systems mattered more than people. We changed because we had to. A hologram appeared behind him, an archive requested by the council. It showed Earth's history. Wars, collapse, rebuilding, slowly, painfully. We are not perfect, Ethan continued. But we learned that strength doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. The chamber was silent. The counselor finally spoke. And what would you have us do, human? Let people choose, Ethan said simply. If your system is strong, it will survive choice. If it isn't, then it shouldn't exist. Sarai felt her heart pound. This was the moment everything balanced on. The council withdrew once more. But this time the wait was longer. Hours became a full cycle. Tension spread through the station. News feeds overflowed with debate. Protests formed on distant worlds. Young beings questioned elders. Elders feared losing control. When the council returned, the lead counselor looked changed, older. By unanimous decision, it announced, the coalition will reform the breeding program. Participation shall require informed, voluntary consent. No individual shall be compelled. The chamber erupted. Some cheered, some shouted in protest, some sat in stunned silence. Sarai felt tears blur her vision. She had never imagined hearing those words. The counselor raised its arms again. This reform will be known as the human clause. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed. The counselor turned to Sarai. Your role is concluded. You are free of obligation. She bowed her head, not in submission but in acknowledgement. After the session, Sarai and Ethan stood together in a quiet corridor overlooking open space. For the first time since she was chosen, Sarai did not feel watched. She felt light. What will you do now? Ethan asked. She considered the question. For so long her future had been written by others. Now the page was blank. I want to learn, she said. I want to see worlds without being evaluated. I want to decide who I become. He smiled. Sounds like a good plan. She looked at him. And you? I'll go where I'm needed, he replied. Probably somewhere I can cause less trouble. She laughed softly. The sound surprised her. It felt good. The council contacted them again days later, privately this time. The lead counselor spoke without ceremony. The coalition requires a bridge, someone who understands both perspectives. Sarai understood immediately. You want an ambassador? Yes, the counselor said. Voluntary, she glanced at Ethan. He nodded, supportive but silent. I accept, she said, on my terms. The counselor inclined its head. Agreed. Months passed. Sarai traveled with human crews, alien scholars, and mixed delegations. She spoke to young candidates, to leaders, to those who had never believed change was possible. She did not speak with anger. She spoke with honesty. Ethan returned to service, but his role shifted. He became an advisor, a voice of reason in tense negotiations. Humanity's reputation changed, from unpredictable newcomers to respected reformers. One evening on a quiet station orbiting a blue-white star, Sarai and Ethan met again. You changed the galaxy, she said. He shook his head. You did, she smiled. You showed me I could. They stood side by side, watching ships move like distant lights. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a new generation grew up knowing they were not tools or prizes. They were choices, and the galaxy would never be the same again.